I did have one job after college where I worked in the back office of a business, and it turned out to be a strip joint. I had put ads in the paper for models, which turned out to be nude models. It didn't last long. The police showed up, and I thought, okay, I'm out of here.
Tell me about the one time you went backstage at a Taylor Swift show.
I'm crazy about Taylor Swift. After the show, she invited us to go to a party that she gave for all of the crew. And my friend Kate said, let's go play beer pong. And as we went over there, Abby Wambach, who had just won the World Cup championship for soccer, came over to me and she said, I'm going to be your advisor. I'm like, great. And I said, what's your advice? And she said, get the fucking ball in the fucking cup. And I was like, that's your advice?
Had you ever played beer pong before?
No.
Have you ever played it since?
No.
Were you good?
No.
You and Martha Stewart are very different. What's one trait she has that you like?
You know, before Martha, taking care of a house is something you just did, but she made it really valued and appreciated. And I think people take pride in what they do, in cooking and taking care of a house and decorating, things like that, gardening. I really admire that.
You've had a lot of odd jobs. What's your one piece of advice to someone who can't find their passion?
Think about what you used to do when you were 10. Before there were these, I should be a lawyer, I should be a doctor, or whatever it is. The things that you just love doing naturally, and figure out how to make a living doing it.
Is there one person who encouraged you to go after your passion?
Jeffrey, from the time I met him. He had this saying with me that he said, do what you love. If you love it, you'll be really good at it. And I thought it was so smart.
What's one thing you'd tell an Ina looking for her Jeffrey?
Find somebody who's really positive and supportive and funny and smart and adorable. He never tells me what to do, ever. He says, here are 3 things I think would be fun for you. He tells me the first one, I'm like, that's great. That's just what I'm going to do. He goes, what about the other 2? It's like, I don't need 3. But he never tells me what to do.
Tell me about the one time you thought that you and Jeffrey weren't going to work out.
Well, it was a moment when I was 30, and I think women were trying to figure out their relationships. And when in my 20s, Jeffrey and I were husband and wife, and he was the husband and I was the wife. And I really wanted to change that relationship, and it was really hard to do. And so we took a little break, and we restructured it, and we came out of it as partners, not in any defined roles. And I really credit the rest of our lives to that time. But it was scary, because he might have found somebody else that wanted to be his wife.
What was the key to the breakthrough there?
The key to that moment was we both wanted to make it work. And we both changed. He understood that my work was really important to me. So we had 2 jobs that we both really wanted to do. And Jeffrey's attitude always is, let's see if we can do them both. And let's figure it out. And we did. And he would go to Kenya on Monday and come back on Friday, or go to Costa Rica, or for a couple of years, Japan. For 2 years, I had a specialty food store in East Hampton. I didn't want to miss a weekend. So once a month, I would leave New York on Monday. I'd arrive in Japan on Tuesday. On Thursday, I'd get back on a plane and arrive back here on Friday and go work in the store for the weekend. And Jeffrey did the reverse once a month.
What's one sacrifice that you've made for each other?
There was one time when I was afraid I couldn't pay my employees one week, and Jeffrey decided to quit his job so that he could get his retirement fund and I could pay my employees. Fortunately, they decided to lend him the money instead. The sacrifice I've made for him is I let him load the dishwasher. After he leaves the room, I can rearrange it.
Can you tell me about the first time that you met Jeffrey?
The first time I met Jeffrey, he came to Connecticut. He had seen me at Dartmouth when I was visiting my brother, but I hadn't met him. And he came to Connecticut on his way home to Virginia to take me out on a date.
I know that you've kept all the letters that he sent you early in your relationship.
You know, I have a box that I was left at my parents' house that had all the letters he sent to me from when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then later when he was in the military and he was stationed in Thailand. So it was incredible looking at the letters and realizing things that I hadn't remembered at all. For example, he wrote a letter saying, I want to take you to Paris. In the beginning, we probably won't have any money, so maybe we'll go camping. And then later, maybe if we have a little bit of money, we'll be able to stay in a hotel, and maybe someday we'll be able to have an apartment there. And I had no recollection of this letter, but in fact, that's exactly what happened. In between his military service and graduate school, we had 4 months and nothing to do. And we decided the only thing we could afford was to go camping in Europe, and literally had $5 a day that covered gas, the campsite, and food. Everything we needed was $5. If you spent $10, you had to go home a day early. And that's what we did for 4 months. And later we did go stay in a hotel. And later we were really fortunate to have an apartment.
Is there one restaurant that everyone who goes to Paris should go to?
You know, I love Café de Flore. They make fabulous omelets, and Jeffrey and I, when we go somewhere else, like if we go to Brussels for the day, we like to go there at like 11 o'clock at night and have an omelet, green salad, and a glass of champagne. And it's just so French and so delicious.
Is there one cooking secret that applies to nearly everything you make?
When I had a specialty food store, I decided that extra large eggs were more egg per dollar than regular eggs, and you can always buy them. And I've had people tell me that their baking got better when they started using extra large eggs.
What's one recipe that took the longest to crack?
The longest recipe I ever worked on was Boston cream pie. I think I worked on it for like 8 years. And actually, Christina Tosi, she gave me the secret to solve the problem that I was having, which is the cake was a little dry. And she told me to do an orange juice and sugar soak that I ended up adding a little Grand Marnier to, and that was the end.
Is there one secret to getting your coconut cupcakes right?
Follow the recipe. And actually, another thing too is that recipe is really good because you can make it in advance, wrap them really well, and put them in the fridge. But you don't ice them until you're ready to serve them. So the cake can last, but make this icing at the last minute.
Do you have any tricks to setting up the perfect dinner party?
Well, when I seat a dinner party, I always put the most talkative people in the middle and the quieter people on the side. If you're 6 people at a round table and the 2 talkative people are sitting next to each other, everybody else feels like they're not part of the party. But if they're seated opposite each other, everybody can have a good time.
Is there one thing you always bring to someone's house?
You know, when I'm going to somebody's house, I want to bring something that acknowledges that they're doing something really hard, making a dinner party, but I never bring something they can serve during the dinner party because it kind of screws up their menu. So I'll bring like really good coffee they can have the next morning, or granola or muffins or something for the next day that they can enjoy.
What's one party hosting mistake you'll never make again?
Having a party for 20 people and deciding I will make an omelet for everybody. Bad idea, because I was in the kitchen the whole time. I've learned from that. I like small parties for like 6. So the more the host is part of the party, the more people have fun. It's really not about the food, it's about the community that you create.